After saying that, Languio struts off with an attitude that screams tough guy. This Special Forces soldier pours an entire jug of booze on his wound and yanks out the sharp spike stuck in his belly. Now that's what I call a hardcore approach. Gritting his teeth through excruciating pain, he decides to use the gunpowder from the bullets for a last-ditch effort to treat his wound. After putting forth all this effort, Languio finally succumbs and collapses to the ground. The Vietnam War has long ended, so where did Languio's wounds come from? He hid in Thailand after the war, doing chores at a temple, like a monk with a part-time job. Occasionally, he joins underground boxing to help temple expenses. But good times are short. His old boss returns with exciting Afghanistan updates. With the Soviet invasion, Afghanistan has become a complete mess. But thanks to US military aid, the Soviets have managed to isolate the place even more. The US urgently needs spies to check Afghanistan's climate. The general hopes Languio joins him. Finding a way to smooth US supply would be great, but Languio lost trust in the military. A man of principles. He flat out rejects the general's request, and no amount of persuasion gets him to budge. The general walks away, grumbling, then heads off to Afghanistan with a small crew. Before surveillance, Soviet helicopters attack and defeat them. The general becomes captured with serious injuries instead of a hero. The next day, the embassy informs Languio of the general's capture. Languio planned to quit the game of war. But for the general's sake, he has to jump back in the line of fire. So off to Afghanistan he goes, hunting down the resistance leader to gather the US weapons prepped for him. Upon seeing US attack, Lani is left speechless. Fully armed, Languio gallops to the Afghan base. Meanwhile, Languio's boss faces Soviet treatment, seeking US intel. Just then, the Soviets receive a tip-off about Languio's impending homecoming. The Soviet officer scoffs, this guy really has guts. Languio and his crew arrive at the resistance camp, where a turned Soviet soldier spills the beans about the bases. Languio suggests sneaking in through the minefield, but the resistance deems it too risky. Languio sighs, guess I'll go alone. But the resistance vetoes Languio going solo, and can't come up with a plan. Just then, a gang of Afghan militia strolls in, inviting Languio to join their horseback competition. Lani jumps in to explain the rules like it's the highlight of the day. Just when the competition is heating up, Soviet helicopters strike, bombing the crowd below mercilessly. Afghans are caught in Soviet choppers' fire, while some fight back with AK. In the blink of an eye, people are gunned down from the skies. Witnessing this, Languio sprints to man the guns and showers bullets on the Soviet chopper, blowing it to smithereens. The remaining Soviet planes beat a hasty retreat. Sitting among the rubble, Languio frowns at the devastation, swearing hell may the Soviets pay for this madness. The resistance invites Languio to evacuate, but he insists on revenge at the Soviet base. They stare in astonishment. Why risk your life for a war that's not yours? But for Languio, after witnessing such horror, this is personal. That night, he and Lani stealthily make their way to the Soviet base. Just then, an Afghan kid shows up whose parents have met their demise due to Soviet shelling. He pleads to Languio for revenge, and against his better judgment, Languio agrees. The trio sneaks into the Soviet base and plants bombs before he heads to the dungeon. He feels a responsibility to track down his boss, so the three of them bury the bombs and Languio heads to the dungeon. He learns from other hostages that his boss is in a nearby cell. As he's picking the lock, the Soviets catch him, and in a panic, he takes care of the interruption with a knife. But this raises alarms, and with soldiers closing in, Languio has no choice but to whip out his gun, fighting for his life as he the bombs he planned to go off, turning the Soviet base into a fiery inferno while Languio continues his gunfight with the soldiers inside the dungeon. A Soviet officer shoots the boy following Languio. Languio gets thrown back, impaled, and has to scoop him up and retreat. With Lani leading the way, they escape through the sewers. Just when Languio is about to mount up, a Soviet soldier takes out the resistance fighter who came to help. Languio whips out a rocket launcher and decisively takes out the pursuing Soviet armored vehicle. They temporarily escape. He's ruthless enough to rip his own wound. After the fiery baptism, Languio bandages himself, silently vowing to rescue the general from the Soviet camp. Meanwhile, a furious Soviet officer tortures Languio's boss, who, despite his suffering, remains unafraid, knowing Languio will come back. The Soviet officer shows disbelief. He's got a whole squad. The Soviets decide to hunt for Languio. Seizing the chance, Languio sneaks into the Soviet base, dungeon, and knocks out a guard with one move. He rescues the tortured general and frees all the hostages. But just then, the Soviet officer returns, and upon seeing the empty dungeon, he instantly feels as he steps out, he runs right into Languio, who's taking off in a helicopter. Languio opens fire, causing the helicopter to crash and burn. Just as more Soviet choppers arrive, Languio launches a high-explosive arrow and takes one down with the helicopter explodes mid-air. The Soviet officer bombs Languio, but with his ultimate pro-gamer moves, Languio gracefully dodges everything while a swarm of soldiers rushes in from the ground. But Languio easily takes them out. The Soviet officer finds Languio on the radio when contacting his troops. Confused, the Soviet officer realizes he's bitten off more than he can chew. Just when Languio and his allies are about to reach the border, a massive Soviet armored force ambushes them, complete with tanks and planes galore. Without a second thought, Languio goes all in, taking out an armored car right off the bat, then dives into the trenches with the general to exchange gunfire with the Soviets. When they are in peril, the Soviets abruptly turn Afghan cavalry arrive. Languio seizes the moment to retaliate with his machine gun, but the Afghan resistance struggles against the armored units, slowly succumbing. Meanwhile, Languio finds a tank from who knows where and starts obliterating Soviet ground troops. The furious Soviet officer charges his plane at Languio's tank. Epic duel ends in catastrophic explosion as tank collides with plane. Just as everyone is dumbfounded, Lang Huo emerges from the tank unscathed, the true iron-blooded hero. The Afghan resistance begs Lang Huo to join, but he calmly declines.